But Glenn Matlock, he will be in the studio. We'll be talking about his new music right here. His new album coming out. Links are down below. New single, Head on a Stick. There you go.
Good.
There, Glenn, there you are, my friend. Gotta give you a round of applause.
There you go.
You are like royalty rock and roll here. You look great. You got a nice head of hair, and you're classy. You know, it's like
but look, so it moves a bit.
But the new single, Head on a Stick, is out. You can stream it now, the video, correct?
Yeah. So I believe. I don't quite know how these things work. I'm on a learning curve, but if you say so,
I say so.
I agree with you.
So hey man, so tell me, you've been so busy. You had this record you're doing. In between, you're playing with Blondie. Are you a member now of Blondie? What's going on with that?
I think I'm a permanent sideman. So we got some more shows coming up in fact, I'm flying to New York on the 13th, and then we're playing in not Miami, but Fort Lauderdale. Then we go to Mexico, and then we go to Lima, and then we go to Santiago in Chile. And then there's a little bit of a break, and then we got some shows in Coachella.
Wow.
And then there's about 6 weeks, most of May, tail end of April, and that. And then we got about 10 shows in England, Glastonbury being one of them, which could be kind of cool. But in that time, that's when my album comes out, and hopefully I'm going to be doing some shows with my mob then. And I'm also next week, I'm kind of in at the last minute, I'm helping the guys out. They're doing this Lust for Life tour with Kevin Armstrong, Clem's doing it, and this girl, Katie Puckrick. So I'm doing that as well.
That's pretty cool. You're busy, man.
Nothing much on the telly.
No, you're not watching much on the telly at all. Hey, playing with Clem, that's great. I mean,
Clem's great. I love Clem.
He's one of the best. Now, were you living in New York ever?
I've never lived in New York. I spent a lot of time there.
Okay.
In the 80s, the early 80s was kind of funny because people forget this. There was Freddie Laker Airlines, did standby fares, and it made all the other airlines do it. And what happened was, if you went to New York, you didn't see an American because all the American rock and rollers were in London, and all the London ones were in the East Village or somewhere like, or Soho. It's kind of funny, but it was a good time. Great,
it was a good time. You got to be there at a better time. I got there at probably when the music scene was changing. So I was there mid 80s to 91, right when grunge was staying. I didn't realize you did some gigs also with that Sid solo band. I didn't realize that.
No, I only did one in England.
It was in England, the gig?
Yeah, we did one at the Electric Ballroom, and then he did some other stuff at Max's, I think, with Mick Jones and I don't know, maybe Jerry Nolan on drums and somebody else. I wasn't involved in that. First time I went to New York, did this, an Englishman, 1979.
Mm-hmm.
Playing with Iggy Pop, we played the Palladium on Halloween. And back then in England, nobody really knew what Halloween was unless you was from some kind of village in Cornwall or somewhere. And the whole audience were dressed in Halloween costumes, which I'd never seen before. The Cramps supported us, and in my mind, I think I'm right, and I like to remember it this way anyway, but backstage was Debbie Harry dressed as a witch, and she gave me a kiss on the cheek. 1979, first time in New York. How's about
that? Does she remember the story, dressed as a witch with the kiss?
I haven't brought it up with her yet. Maybe I will. I'm scared of saying it in case I remembered it wrong, and I want to keep the memory fresh in my mind.
You got to play with a lot of great cats. And the last time you're on the show, we talk a little bit about it because you think about your career, first of all, being the founding original member of the Pistols. And then you go on to play with all these other great, like the Faces. I had Kenny Jones on the show and I was actually interviewing him and I was nervous. I'm thinking I grew up with this guy and I didn't realize that he was the guy on the recording for It's Only Rock and Roll, the Stones song.
Yeah. Well, I think him and Ronnie wrote the song together, And I think what happened, everything's got to be Jagger Richards. And the story I heard was Mick Jagger came in and said, "Oh, that sounds good. What's that?" And they went, "Oh, it's only rock and roll, but we like it."
It's so cool. It's so
So
good. That's a great
yeah,
story.
yeah.
When you got to go jam with them, just like get the gig offered to you, did you get that like the kid in the kid inside of you? Like,
Oh,
wow,
I'm not half, of course, yeah.
yeah.
But the reason it happened was because I was mates with Ian McLagan. He'd done some stuff with the Rich Kids. He did a tour with us, and he plays on the track on the album. And then we lost touch. He moved to the States, and then I was driving out of town, and there was a local radio show, the GLR, like the London radio thing.
Hmm.
And they had a round table program, and Jar Wobble was on it, and Ian McLagan. They announced it, and I pulled over, and I know the people at the station. I called him up. I said, "Give Matt my number, when the show's finished." Anyway, I drove to where I was going, and I was on a boat going to the Isle of Wight, and the phone rang. It was him. And I didn't think he called me back, but he did. And he said, "I'm in town." I said, "Well, I'm away for a couple of days. Let's have a coffee." And I met up with him. And I always got on with him. He sort of had a laugh, although I think he gets on with most people. But I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I'm doing a bit of this and that." And I said, "Like what?" He said, "Well, I play with Dylan. It's all right. Springsteen keeps calling me up, and money's all right." But then he said, "Yes, call me up." I said, "What are they calling me up for?" He said, "I like songs that have a beginning and a middle and an end." And he said, "They don't." He said, "I'm not doing that." I said, "What do you want to do?" He said, "Well, I really want to reform Faces." So I said, "Well, Ronnie Lane had passed away by then." I said, "If you do get it together, you're going to need a bass player. And I know that you know that you know that I know that you know that I'm the right bloke for the job. Put in a word for us." Anyway, he did. And they were trying to get Rod. Rod didn't do it, but Mick Hucknall did it. But it was Ronnie and Kenny and Mac.
Yeah.
And then he called me out. He said, "Right, Ian, you sure you can do this?" And I said, "Ian, I learnt to play listening to you guys, and I know those songs backwards." And he went, "Oh, great." I said, "It's just forwards I have trouble with." And he laughed, and that was it.
That
It
was
was
it.
great. I just really enjoyed playing them. That was the band that I used to stand in front of the mirror when I was 14, pretending I was in them. We didn't do that many gigs, sadly, because the Rolling Stones called up Ronnie. But the last gig we did was in front of 50,000 people headlining the Fuji Festival. Now, for the band that you used to, you didn't really know which way your guitar around, you go, pretty cool, really.
So cool.
Dreams do come true, but it's a drag we didn't do more. But there you go. But they're some of my all-time favourite musicians. I've got some great people. There's something about the way Ronnie Wood plays guitar that I love. It's kind of edgy, but